Welcome, everyone. It's great to see you all here today. For those of you who have begun your semester already, I hope your first few days or weeks of school have been great so far. And for those of you with a few more days of summer left, I hope you get some good rest. My name is Emily, and I'm an admissions officer here at the Rhode Island School of Design, better known as RISD. And today I'm joined by my lovely colleague, Marin. Would you like to introduce yourself?
This is me, Marin. I'm excited to be here supporting Emily. I also work in admissions, and today I will be acting as chat manager. And that means that while Emily's presenting her incredible presentation, I will be um, in the background answering questions in the Q&A chat box. That is the icon, a few icons to the right of the chat box where you told us where you're all tuning in from. So please, please, please make sure to enter questions in the Q&A chat box. If you enter in the regular chat box, we're not going to be able to get to them. We're going to prioritize the Q&A chat box questions. And then the regular chat box, I'm going to be dropping in some helpful links along the way. I also encourage you all to just kind of stay tuned to the presentation. It's got a lot of great information, and maybe hold your questions till it gets closer to the end because there's a really good chance that your question will be answered in the presentation. So with that, I will be disappearing and I'll reappear after the presentation. Also, just know that this is being recorded, so if you miss anything, no worries. All right, take it away, Emily.
Thanks, Marin. That's all very helpful information. So, today we will be talking about all things portfolio, and particularly what it means to create a well-rounded portfolio. So, like Marin was saying, the first half of the presentation will consist of a presentation, and then the second half will be more of a conversational Q&A. So, let's jump right in. Let us start by talking about what a portfolio is. The broad definition of a portfolio is a collection of examples that showcases your thinking and making in your creative practice. Oops. But keep in mind the portfolio you put together for your RISD application has specifications and parameters. All art schools have different portfolio requirements and look for specific things. So in this presentation, I'm going to go in depth about what RISD looks for in a portfolio. I will also note that this Portfolio Tips webinar is tailored towards the undergraduate application process with a default to the first year application specifically. So if you happen to be joining us as a prospective transfer student, you will still receive plenty of helpful information in this session, but I would also recommend that you check out our transfer specific webinars, most of them hosted by Marin, throughout the fall and winter as well. So let's start with the basic portfolio requirements. Your RISD portfolio is meant to be a highly curated, limited selection of just your strongest examples of visual work. First year applicants will use SlideRoom, which is an online portfolio platform, to submit their portfolio to RISD. If you're wondering what SlideRoom is, don't worry. We will go over how to use that platform in our application prep webinar series later on in the fall. Now, I'll also note here, transfer applicants will upload their portfolio within their application submission. So there's a difference there. So let's go back to the first year application. In SlideRoom, you need to include at least 12 pieces and you'll have up to 20 slots that you can fill. You do not need to max out all 20 slots. And in fact, we encourage quality over quantity. Include only the pieces that you feel are the strongest, unique, most original to you. And as a reminder, RISD no longer requires the RISD assignment. So there are no strict assignments to the RISD portfolio. The parameters are pretty wide open for you to include the work that you think speaks best to your potential. So let's talk a little bit about what we mean when we say we're looking for a well-rounded portfolio. I know that term can feel sort of vague at points. So well-rounded, generally speaking, is defined by variety, diversity, balance, and concision. Here at RISD, we tend to say that a well-rounded portfolio requires variation in medium and mode, clarity in presentation and curation, and reflection of your specific point of view. Why do we have this emphasis on well-roundedness at RISD, you might ask? Well, in many ways, it all comes back to our first year curriculum called Experimental and Foundation Studies. You'll hear a lot of folks at RISD call this EFS. And if you've attended a RISD 101 before, you've definitely heard about this program, but I'll explain it in brief. EFS is a required foundation program for all RISD first-year students and a summer program for most transfer students. So in sections of 20, students work within 3 studios, which are design, drawing, and spatial dynamics, which is our fancy word for sort of three-dimensional creation. Students in the class pictured here designed and built their own musical instruments, for example. Throughout EFS Studios, RISD students pursue drawing, design, and spatial dynamics both as powerful ways to investigate the world and essential activities intrinsic to art and design practice. These studios become laboratories for varied and challenging activities to explore, experiment, and iterate. The philosophy behind EFS is the same philosophy that will carry through your entire education at RISD, which is that there's focused value and collaborative interplay across fine arts, design, and the liberal arts as well. So since EFS, the Experimental and Foundation Studies year, will shape your first year at RISD and the rest of your education at RISD, we recommend that students keep those EFS studios in mind when creating their portfolio. So pieces that can speak to drawing, design, and spatial dynamics can provide reviewers with a stronger sense of your potential as a RISD student. One question we hear all the time at admissions is what is more important, technical skill or creativity, assignments or experimentation? And the answer is, of course, both, but it's a little bit more nuanced than that. When we're talking about technical skill, we're referring to how you purposefully use your materials to achieve a finished piece or endeavor. There are some key terms to consider when you think about technical skill in the context of your own work. One of the first that comes to mind is composition. How do you arrange all the different elements within a piece? Or texture, the literal feel of a tactile surface or material, including the appearance of a tactile surface or material. Point of view, how you compose your piece in relation to the viewer. In other words, is the viewer looking at the subject from below, from above, from behind, from 1 mile away? And light, how do you use areas of light and dark to create an illusion of space, a sense of mood, and add emphasis in your piece? You can consider the color and temperature of the lighting. Here, it's kind of cold, early morning light. It makes this piece feel empty. And this is a warm, late afternoon light. It feels more cozy. And color, of course. How can you communicate an emotional resonance with hue, saturation, tone, contrast? In all of these examples, we're not just talking about a technical skill in an isolated context. We're talking about how the use of a technical skill allows the artist to communicate their ideas in a more compelling way. This is why we challenge you to use your technical skills to go further than just an exercise about technique. One way that you can go further than just a technical exercise is to allow your work to shapeshift. For example, in isolation, one of these drawings may look to be a rather simple observational drawing of objects in a student's house. But compiled together, enlarged in size and sort of cluttered in composition, the artist Tara uses an iterative process to expand beyond a routine observational drawing into something more compelling and more engaging. Tara herself described that my mother's house is a messy house. The piles of random clutter found in almost every room are a manifestation of and a metaphor for the strained, complicated relationships and emotional intensities of the house. We're cluttered, frustrated, loving folk, my mother and I. It's complicated, but it's our house. So in this example, you can see and feel how the patchwork of frames adhered together makes these technical skills actually shine in the context of a story. Another way to expand beyond the redundancy of, say, a regular old still life of a bowl of fruit or whatever it might be, is to make your own still life. So this student made their own still life out of found and created objects. Using lighting and composition intentionally, LaBelle was able to draw a much creepier story than what the iPhone picture on the right captured. So there's both concept and technical skill present in this example. Why not use some more color in your pieces? There really aren't any rules. I encourage you to take risks, try new things, and develop your technical skills in things like observational drawing and mark making in exciting and adventurous ways, not just classroom assignments. Our advice at this point in the process is to make now and curate later. Since it's only just like the end of August right now, you don't need to worry about having a finalized college ready portfolio at this very moment. I encourage you to spend September trying some new things, and then we can check back in October and November about what that curation process might look like. So, what's new to you? What haven't you tried? Maybe it's exploring mood, the feeling or impression that a piece leaves on the viewer. Think about narrative. What story do you want your piece to tell, and how are you telling it? What you leave out can actually be just as important as what you include. Yeah, and how you retell stories that have been told time and time again, like the story of Little Red Riding Hood on the left. Maybe it's expanding your ideas and concepts, what you want the viewer to start thinking about when they look at or interact with your work. This can be a particular point of view or a set of values. This can be large scale issues like the contrast between war induced violence, famine, and poverty and extreme wealth. Or they can be smaller scale issues and stories that matter to you. Feel free to scale projects up and down. There's no one right way to tell a story or communicate an issue in an effective way. Take this design-based project, for example. This is a gardening tool for arthritis patients. In this case, specificity and a narrowing of the intended audience actually benefits the project immensely. Perhaps the designer, Chen Zhu, had a grandparent who loved to garden and recently received an arthritis diagnosis. The student identified the problem and decided to construct a beautiful and functional object that could both support their goal of helping a loved one continue to participate in the activities they love and serve a greater purpose of creating industrial design based work that suits their aesthetic interests. There are problems all around us, obviously. And so, as artists, those problems are just waiting to be identified by us and acted upon. So, vary your process. Take a look at the work you already have and identify the comfort zone you enjoy staying in. Seek out opportunities to get outside of that comfort zone when you can. Are you primarily a graphic designer? Well, try taking a ceramics class if your high school or local community college offers one. Do you spend most of your time working on digital illustrations? Try something tactile and physical like this multimedia illustration by Alina Jolie. If this does, or sorry, this does not mean that you have to bounce around to every material and try every discipline in the world. If you're not interested in architecture or not interested in oil paint, you don't have to try those things. You can find ways to experiment and vary your process within the same mode you like to work in. Here you can see three completely different examples of portraiture. We have drawing, textile, and photography. So even if you like working in one discipline, consider how you might experiment. Photography, for example. There are an infinite number of ways to compose and create an interesting photograph, from lighting to shadows to layering and mixed media. Consider how your work can expand beyond the bounds of its own medium. This is true even if you have an idea of what you want to major in. You can use the portfolio as an opportunity to be creative. I want to kind of pull back and remind us a little bit more about the RISD curriculum in particular. RISD offers 18 different undergraduate majors, and our first year students are guaranteed a spot in whatever major they declare at the end of their first year. So take a look at all these different majors. I'm guessing more than one thing is sticking out to you as interesting and exciting. An interesting stat is that over 70% of our students end up declaring a different major than what they originally entered into RISD believing they would major in. So keep an open eye. You might surprise yourself. All right, so we've talked a lot about experimentation and variety thus far in the presentation. So let's talk a little bit more about the specific things that RISD application reviewers might be looking for in your portfolio. First up, reviewers are going to look for work from observation. Working directly from observation in any medium is always a great idea, and the way in which you do so tells us so much about your personality and perspective. The most common method of working from observation would be observational drawing, which you'll hear us talk a lot about. Drawing from direct observation means working from real life people, objects, and places in front of you, not working from 2D references like photos. We generally discourage drawing from photographs in general because it often leads to flattened or distorted drawings. Drawing is not just marks on a piece of paper. As a primary mode of inquiry, drawing is essential to forming questions and creating knowledge across disciplines. It is thinking visually, it is planning, it is investigating, observing, remembering, editing, communicating. It is all these things. And like we talked about earlier on in the presentation, drawing from observation doesn't have to be a, quote unquote, boring charcoal drawing of a bowl of fruit or a 5-minute figure drawing. Observational drawings can be colorful and textured and abstract and energetic and eerie and quiet and loud and all of these things. You can observe real life qualities and exaggerate them in observational drawings. You can work for hours or minutes and still create compelling observations. And you can draw what interests you. If you are interested in architecture, draw buildings. Create these imagined, drawn observations using the world around you. Which leads us into the next central theme of what a reviewer is going to be searching for in your portfolio. And that is personality. What do you have to say and how do you want to say it? If you like to create characters, make sure you give them a personality too. We don't necessarily want you to think about what a RISD student's portfolio should look like. We want your portfolio to be a reflection of what and who you authentically are, what you find interesting and how you think. There's again no one right way to do a RISD portfolio. One intuitive way to showcase your personality in the portfolio might be to include some sketchbook images. We can talk a little bit more about this in the conversational Q&A, but this is a great way to kind of bring both of those elements in together of observational drawing and your own authentic flair. So it's almost as important to actually talk about what we're not looking for as what we are looking for. I have a short list here of things that I really would recommend not including in your portfolio. Please do not include master copies like recreations of, say, Van Gogh's Starry Night or Da Vinci's Mona Lisa. We've all seen those pieces before, and they don't tell us anything about you. They only really tell us about Van Gogh and Da Vinci. Please do not include fan art. Remember that this is, in essence, an academic submission. Please do not include anime or any style of work that is clearly derivative of a defined and highly identifiable style. It's hard to create anime style drawings that do not look like someone else's, if that makes sense. Please do not include cliche photography like flowers or buildings. Please do not include performing arts videos. And there's a difference between performing arts videos and performance art videos, if that makes sense. So performing arts videos might be like dance performances, concerts, recitals, theater. But performance art might look like sound design or art and computation or a piece that has a time-based media element to it. And then please don't create an exclusively digital portfolio. Yes, you will be submitting your portfolio digitally, but we'd love for your portfolio to contain pieces that you worked on with your hands and physical media. Digital work can be included by all means, but it doesn't give us the best sense of how you will be in a RISD fine arts studio in your EFS year. Oops. 1 second. Okay, so with all this information we've discussed, I'm guessing you guys still have like lots of questions and we're totally going to get into those. But I will also highlight the fact that portfolio reviews are one of the best opportunities to get direct feedback on your work in particular. So here are some of the events that we have coming up. Maybe you guys have already attended one of these before. Maybe this is brand new to you. Essentially, portfolio reviews are a chance to have a conversation with an admissions representative about your work and your portfolio at this current stage in the process. So you usually sign up for a 10 to 15-minute slot. We'll chat with you. We'll tell you what's working, what you can work on, ideas for future projects, or answer questions about formatting. It's a really sort of flexible and expansive process. We do a lot of these online, so this is really accessible to everyone coming from all the places that you listed before. We have 2 coming up in September. One of them is on a weekday evening, and one of them is on a Saturday during the day, so hopefully some flexibility for folks in different time zones. And then we also do attend some of the National Portfolio Day events across cities in the United States. So this year we're attending a handful. You can see those cities listed on the slide here. So those will be coming up primarily in October and November, but we do have, if you happen to be coming from the Maryland or DMV area, we will be in Baltimore on September 13th. So keep these dates in mind. I'm guessing my colleague Marin will drop a link in the chat on how to register for these events in particular. But come chat with us. It's a really helpful opportunity and it holds no stake in the admissions process. So it's like truly just a chance to have a conversation. All right, so let's get into a little bit of a Q&A. I'm going to go ahead and stop my screen share.
All right, excellent presentation. Thank you so much, Emily.
Thanks, Marin.
We have a lot of great questions. Okay, this one was the first question we got. It is, can you speak to um, if somebody wants to include a short film, but it's like 25 minutes long? What would you recommend they do? And kind of what are our thoughts on like films or videos if they want to include in the portfolio?
Yeah, that's a great question. So definitely include time-based media if that's part of your practice and part of your portfolio. We encourage films and animations. We do ask that any time-based media, so any video uploads, are less than 2 to 3 minutes in length. And that's because you want to make sure the reviewer can watch the entire film submission in its entirety. If you submit a 30-minute film, there's no guarantee that the reviewer is going to be able to watch the entire thing. But if you submit a 2-minute film or a 2-minute section of your 30-minute film, there is a much greater chance that the reviewer will be able to watch the entire film in its entirety. So that's why we recommend shorter media for video uploads. If you are someone who makes a lot of films and has a lot of work that you want to showcase, what we would then recommend doing is maybe compiling a sort of reel of clips, scenes, favorite shots, favorite animatics from your pieces and kind of lump them into one 2 minute, 2.5 minute video so that we can get a sense for how you see and frame things in the world in a sort of a quicker sense. It's just like selecting work from your catalog of work. It's sort of the same thing. It's just about editing down. So that's how I would respond to that question. Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you. We got a lot of questions from students interested in architecture.
Mm.
And of course, before I say more, once again, everyone, please just keep in mind as first years, you're not applying to any particular major, but it's perfectly all right to be interested in any particular major. If you're applying as a transfer, then you're applying to a major. But because we got so many questions about architecture, would you mind just, even though you spoke to it a bunch of times, can you kind of speak to what might be good work to include, whether they're applying directly to architecture as a transfer or just have a lot of interest and some experience in architecture? What would you recommend and not recommend including in the portfolio?
Yeah, totally. That's a great question. And I totally acknowledge that our portfolio requirements, even if you're applying as an architecture interested student, are quite different than other schools where you apply directly to their architecture department. So you will have to tailor your portfolio a little bit to suit RISD's interests versus the portfolio you might be submitting to directly to architectural programs. So I just want to start by saying that. For students interested in architecture, your RISD portfolio can certainly have that focus to it. You can include, we'd love to see some physical models if that's been part of your process. We want to see about how you're thinking about form and massing, what you can do with a very simple form to make it sort of architecturally interesting. We would love to see digital renders that have some sort of conceptual intrigue to them. I will note that we don't want to see floor plans or anything that's exclusively technical. And that's because that doesn't give us a sense for who you are and how you think basically at all. That just gives us a sense for how you work with a computer, which isn't always the most helpful in a portfolio. And then I would also include in my list of things that you should, think about, like we talked about before, draw the buildings that you're inspired by. You know, if there's maybe there's like a really beautiful museum near in your neighborhood that you can walk to and you can sketch what that museum looks like from the outside. Maybe your house, you draw inspiration from your house. Maybe you draw a corner of it and you focus on texture, thinking about how you can relate to the architecture in a way that isn't just an architectural practice, if that makes sense. And then here's my other thing. I'm going to recommend that you get outside of your comfort zone. That's what I'm going to say over and over. Architects, especially at RISD, are constantly building and making things. It's a lot of physical modeling. So, including other parts of your fine arts practice can actually be such an asset to a portfolio for a student interested in architecture. So maybe that's taking a class in sculpture or ceramics, a woodworking class, maybe it's like a metalsmithing class. Learning how to do those technical skills in the context of a fine arts environment can be so beneficial for how you think about your architectural practice overall. But I'm going to round out that question just by saying, again, different architecture programs, and this is true for all programs, are different programs. So doing architecture at a fine art and design school is going to look different than doing architecture at a large state school with a very focused architecture program. So talk to your people, think about what that looks like for you, and know that if you come to RISD and study architecture here, you're going to have a really rewarding experience that's sort of centered around this art and design practice. Yeah.
Excellent, thank you. Another question we had is demonstrating the process of making the art recommended, um, or just showing the final products? And also on that same note, if a linked video explaining the process behind a heavily process-based piece, would the admissions department watch the video?
Okay. So the vast majority of your work in your portfolio should be finished, complete work, and it really should be able to speak for itself. You want the reviewer to be able to spend time with a piece and have questions about it and investigate through the experience of simply looking at the piece. Not everything has to be explained, is what I'll say first and foremost. If you want to include one or two pieces that have that sort of like process-based element to them, or you think that's really essential to the reviewer's understanding of the project itself, you can do so. I would recommend limiting that. One in progress photo. You could do one in, process-based video. No more than that, really, because that can start to get a little bit cluttered and confuse the reviewer as to what is the finished work and what is the in progress work. And then again, if you're submitting a video of any kind, please keep it under 2 to 3 minutes in length. But process work can be helpful for us in understanding how you think as an artist and designer. So maybe one or two pieces that you want to dive into that in particular, you're welcome to. But just remember that most of your work for the RISD portfolio should be finished and completed.
Excellent. Um, Now you are kind of the Brown residual degree specialist in our office, Emily. So you're the perfect person to answer this. And this isn't a webinar specific about dual degree, but we did get a great question. Um, you know, does the portfolio need to be different if you're applying for the dual degree program?
Yeah, that's a great question. And as a reminder, we will have dual degree focused webinars in October, dates to be announced soon. That will go more into depth about the application process for dual degree. But speaking on portfolio for dual degree, and as a reminder to those who don't know, or sort of as a as a disclaimer to those who don't know, the Brown RISD dual degree is separate from just sort of the traditional RISD experience, and it's where students are earning a bachelor's degree from both RISD and Brown University simultaneously. So in order to be accepted into the program, you have to apply to both institutions as you would normally and submit one additional essay, the same exact essay that you submit to both schools. So the way that we're going to think about this is that at first you're just submitting a normal RISD application and a normal Brown application. So your focus at this point should be to create a great RISD application, which will include a great portfolio, that speaks to your interests at RISD in particular, your essays, all your RISD stuff. And then for Brown, that's going to look like their application requirements. They tend to have a focus on the essays. There's more essays on the Brown application. There's a video essay that you can do. There's more of an emphasis on different elements of the application process. So check in with both schools, see what they're looking for. And then if you're accepted to both institutions, then a separate Brown RISD dual degree committee will take a look at both of your applications to both schools with a focus on your portfolio for RISD and your essays at Brown. Those will be the focus, and the Brown RISD dual degree essay as well. But all that being said, you don't need to tailor your portfolio for the dual degree program. Your portfolio's primary job is to get you into RISD, and you're welcome to submit a different portfolio for Brown if you'd like. That might also help you get into Brown. And then the committee will review the RISD portfolio in the context of the dual degree process. So I hope that makes sense. I know it can feel like a bit of a complicated um, thing, and that's why I recommend attending the dual degree webinars, because then you can spend a whole hour thinking about it.
Excellent. Okay, this is kind of going back to like process work. When compiling sketchbook pages for a portfolio, is it okay to compile multiple less detailed sketches and submit it as one thing on Sliderm, or should sketches be separate? And on top, as an extension of that, how would you recommend someone maybe showcase their sketchbook?
Yeah, great question. And I'm just remembering that we have a lot of questions, so I'll try to go through these a little bit
No
quicker.
worries, and I'm going to try to go through and condense, like
Okay.
combine and condense as best I can.
Thank
So.
you, Marin. You're the best. And also thank you all for such great questions. We're gonna do our best to answer all of them today. So for sketchbook-based work, I'm gonna have two primary recommendations for you. The first is that you limit the amount of work that you compile onto one slide to no more than 3 images. So we really do not want overly cluttered slides in the RISD portfolio. So that's one way to do it. You could put 3 sketchbook images on one slide, maybe take up 2 slides with 3 images each of your sketchbook work. But my second recommendation, and you're going to hear this from admissions officers at RISD, somewhat frequently, is that sometimes it's just great to like take a video of you flipping through your own sketchbook. That submission of that one video will count as one piece, but in that one piece, you can showcase a ton of work really quickly that might be more informal or more sketch based. So a 1 minute video of you flipping through your favorite sketches in your sketchbook, a great addition to a portfolio.
Excellent. Um, Before I ask you this next question, I did see a couple on here just about portfolio reviews, and wondering like if they need to be finished portfolios. They do not. Please know we're happy to look at your any artwork you'd like to share. Keep in mind you have about 10 to 15 minutes with us, so make sure it's like ready to be shown. But it does not need to be a finished portfolio at all. So please know that. Okay. This question is about how if someone was to submit a children's book that they illustrated and I believe wrote. How should they present it? And, what would you recommend? And that kind of goes along with the sketchbook they were just
Yeah.
talking about and how you would best showcase.
Yeah, I was gonna say maybe a video, and maybe that's a question you bring to a portfolio review as well.
Absolutely. Another thing I will say too, that's kind of similar to what questions we get about graphic novels.
Mhm.
Another thing you could do is like if you wanted to use a slide or two to show like a page layout, like a 2 pages or one that's like across 2 pages. And then in the description, you could have a link to the rest of your book.
Mhm.
And there's no guarantee that the reviewer will click on that link to view it, but that is possible. Okay. If you're submitting a 3D piece, like for example, an architectural model, can you send in multiple photos of the same model for different angles?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, like sculptural or three-dimensional work is there's always gonna be a question of like how best to document that. And the unfortunate thing is that that's a question you'll be asking yourself your whole life is like the best way to document your work. Documentation is sort of like what it's always going to be an important part of an artistic practice. So talk to your art teachers, come to a portfolio review. You can either submit multiple photos of, for instance, a three-dimensional physical model of an architectural piece, or you could again do like a video of you walking around it. It's up to you.
Okay, here's an interesting question. For my observational art, I want to create a piece of my bedroom to ensure I showcase my own personality in my portfolio, even in a still life. However, my room includes collectibles and decorations featuring characters and symbols from pre-existing media. Would these details still be okay to include in the piece? What could I do if I need to negate these
Mm.
features?
I appreciate how thoughtful this question is. I can tell that you've been thinking about all the different elements that we talked about today. So I just want to say thank you for such a thoughtful question. And I'm going to say that because I love what you said at the beginning of the question, which is that you want to showcase, a bit of yourself through your bedroom. I don't think that's going to be an issue if there is an element of your room that references something in popular culture. When I say that we want to avoid fan art or like pre-existing styles, that's mostly talking about like one-to-one representations of like, here's the pre-existing piece, here's me doing a direct copy of that piece, putting it in my portfolio. That's not what we want to see. If you are imparting your own vision, your own point of view onto that media, you're saying, here is this thing. Let's say it's like a book that you love that's on your bookshelf. Here's this thing that is a part of my life. Here's how I see it through my own vision and my own perspective within the context of my room. Oh, yeah, that's fair game. That's totally fair game.
Excellent. Um, okay. So this person has talked to other art schools, and of course, there's differences in the portfolio. Um, and they're asking, would you say RISD is more focused on seeing experimentation and technique in a portfolio for admission?
The answer you're gonna hear from Rizzy a lot is like both. We would love to see experimentation and technical skill. There's not really sort of one that outweighs the other because to RISD, they really interact with one another and they're both essential to the other. Like you need technical skill in order to be able to execute your concepts well, and you need concepts to be able to showcase your technical skill in an interesting way. So as much as you can, just trying like right now, I don't know what grade you're in right now, but trying to spend time developing technical skills so that when it comes time to have like these big crazy ideas that you can do them.
Mhm. We've gotten a lot of questions about our apparel design department and if somebody's interested in eventually majoring in that, like what are some good examples of what people can include? What would you discourage them from including?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. It kind of goes in line with what we were talking about with architecture, where oftentimes that is one of the majors where at other schools you might be applying directly to an apparel program. So for their programs, you're going to be doing like a very apparel portfolio. For RISD, like just like we talked about with architecture, it's really going to be about finding that balance between here's my focus, here's what I love to do, and here's how I've used some of those skill sets that I developed through my apparel design work thus far to try other things. So for apparel design in particular, I mean, you're working a lot with texture and textile and shape and form and the human body. Doing some figure drawings, that's going to be essential. As an apparel designer, you need to know how the human body works and moves and can look in a million different look in a million different ways. We'd also love to see that you've thought about your craft. How are you working with textile and fabric in ways beyond just apparel? Of course, you can include apparel design. Again, please just submit sort of like finished pieces if you can. We don't really want to see mood boards because, again, that's just kind of you referencing things that already exist. We'd rather just see the finished product and be able to like question within ourselves what you were thinking and how you were pulling inspiration for that piece. And then beyond your apparel design work, try maybe you've made a physical garment and you've been lucky enough to have a friend be your model for it. Have them stand. You can draw them. You could create a painting of what you're observing from someone wearing a piece that you've created. You can build off of pre-existing work in that way. And then also just take some classes and things outside of apparel design. I think that can be so helpful because apparel is sort of a multimedia kind of discipline. So it's really helpful to be able to maybe like taking a metalsmithing class, know how to work with jewelry.
Excellent. Um, where did that gun go? Okay. This person, this is kind of a question about variety. They ask if I have two stories and characters that belong to those stories, doesn't it take away from the variety of my portfolio if the characters and the environments they belong in inspire a lot of the pieces for my portfolio?
Okay, yeah, so this is a question that we'll get into, but I'm also going to say is hard to answer without seeing the work itself.
Mhm.
In general, for folks who are interested in character design, that tends to bleed into other areas of your work. So like you've built up, a set of characters and then you're designing environments for them to exist within. So there is sort of like that thread, that connective tissue between a lot of your pieces. It's okay for multiple pieces in a portfolio to relate to one another and to have a conversation. In fact, that's great to see sort of work in series. I'm also just going to say, and you're going to hear this from me over and over, try other things, include other work. Um, Create characters that are totally different than the characters you just created. Try creating them in a different format than usually. Maybe you do a lot of your character design in Procreate. Next up, try doing just charcoal and design a character just in charcoal and see how you're limited by only using black and white and texture in that physical media. So that's what I describe, but come to a portfolio review and we can chat more about it.
Definitely. Ooh, if we've done a solo art exhibition, can we submit photos of the event as one of the slides?
Yeah, I mean, that is part of documentation.
Mhm.
So, certainly, if you think that it provides additional context to the ways in which your pieces were viewed, that's great. And you can also include that detail about having exhibited work in the application in the Common App.
Excellent. Should we include a few sentences of background or story about our pieces in our portfolio, or is there even a place to put a description inside room?
There is. So in Slideroom, you're going to submit title, size, medium, and there's an optional caption. So up to you what you want to say. We just recommend that you keep it short, concise, clear, not overly wordy. Even though I know I'm overly wordy when I talk, so don't heed my do what I say, not what I do.
You're in good company, so am I. What's a good example of how you can show spatial dynamics as a foundation in your portfolio?
Such a great question. So, spatial dynamics really just refers to how you work and think three-dimensionally. So,
Mhm.
anything that relates to sculpture, ceramics, woodworking, metalsmithing, if you've had the absolute uh, privilege of doing glass in high school. I've actually been to two high schools that have glass classes, which is mind-blowing to me. Things that are sort of more installation-based or sculptural in practice. I would also add that even things like animation can speak to spatial dynamic principles because they deal with movement within space. So at its core, spatial dynamics is how do you think about the spatial environment? So think about that as you're making work, but anything sort of three-dimensional should really be reflected well.
Excellent. I just had a really good one. Where did it go? Okay. If my voice for my art is more focused on the creativity of the work or the process of the work itself, will that be looked at less than works with a direct message behind them?
Okay, yeah. So this is a great question. I have so many thoughts about this question, so that's why I'm taking a pause here. I know it can feel really intimidating to hear that we want to see sort of an authentic, creative essence throughout all of your work. Because when I was in high school, I was just making work, and it wasn't clear to me how that was connected to who I was and as an individual, or how that reflected my greater sort of sense of creativity and curiosity. So, all that being said, the portfolio for your application is not supposed to be like this finished professional portfolio. I mean, you should think about it as a body of work that you're presenting proudly and with confidence. But it does not need to be professional level. We understand where you're at right now in life and in the context of your education. And we are looking for potential, first and foremost. We're looking at a piece and not going, oh, I wish they had done it like this, or I wish they had done it like this. It's more of like, oh, I see how they were thinking. I see how this piece came after the one before it. I see how they were iterating off of that other idea that they explored in the last piece. Oh, I think this could really lead to some interesting projects in EFS. Oh, I think they'd be a really good fit for the textiles department. There's all of those ideas that are happening in our head when we're reviewing your work. So I wouldn't focus on perfection at this point. I would focus on developing your work to a point where you are interested by it, if that makes sense.
Mm, excellent. Um, can you speak to like what about what advice would you give an applicant who maybe feels like they're not that strong in drawing, or maybe they work more two-dimensionally, but they're really not that strong with 3D work?
Yeah. We all have our strengths and weaknesses as artists. That's always going to be the case. In some ways, I'm going to say embrace it, even though that doesn't feel super comfortable to say. Think about the first year. You will have to do things that you are not comfortable with and that you haven't spent a lot of time doing. Every single student has to do those things. That's kind of like the whole way that the first year curriculum is designed. So if you're not a comfortable drawer right now, the main way you get better is just by doing it. So find subject matter that you want to draw. Don't just draw the same old stuff if it bores you. Like, I don't think that's the way that we get up in the morning and feel inspired by our own work, is if we're not interested in it. So find things that you want to draw, seek out inspiration from your peers, from your teachers, see what inspires you in your day-to-day life. That student was talking about drawing a corner of their bedroom. I think that's a great thing to draw. You could draw your really dirty shoe. You could draw your cat while your cat's moving. So it's not like a great portrait. It's more about like sort of the personality of your cat and how funky they are. There's ways to explore drawing in ways that are connected to your own interests that aren't just sort of like the standard drawing principles. And then the opposite, same goes for that. If you're comfortable in 2D, take some classes in 3D.
Awesome. We had a couple questions. I think both of these questions kind of deal with variety.
Mhm.
So, okay. How many mediums should be in the portfolio in order to demonstrate readiness for EFS? And then, like, well, I feel like there's a common thread here. Like, how, do all the pieces in the portfolio need to have a common theme, or can they be based on different themes and ideas?
Okay.
In my head, they kind of went together. So that's why I set them together.
No, I think they do too. So the first question was, how many of each thing should I have? There's no answer to that question. That's an answer only you can decide. We're just gonna say, please include variety. That's gonna look different for each student. As far as the second part of the question was about, remind me.
Yeah, should there be like a common thread?
Oh, no. You do not have to have a staining investigation or a theme for your portfolio. Sometimes there is, sometimes there isn't, but up to you.
Excellent. Trying to make sure hit some questions that we haven't answered yet, because a lot of them are great. They're great questions. A lot of them are very similar. So I definitely want to make sure. Um, okay. Okay, this person is very passionate about baking and wants to show some of their digital sketches side by side with the final baking piece, as their example of their ability to transition designs from 2D to 3D. However, their best example of this is a series of cupcakes. I'm getting very hungry reading this. Inspired by a certain singer and their albums. Would this fall under the no fan art guideline, or would it be different since it's unconventional format?
I think I'm gonna go ahead and say that that would fall under sort of the fan art context, especially because it doesn't relate directly to a medium that you could pursue while you're here at RISD. So that might be something to leave out of the portfolio. But think about how your baking and cake decorating skills can apply to other mediums. It sounds like you have a good sense of color and mark making. Try those things out in a painting format. Oil paint has some similarities to frosting in some ways, I guess. So try that out, but I would discourage like cupcakes or cake design.
Mm. Okay, this question, forgive me, I think I got buried before, so thank you for your patience. This question is asking, what if some of my artworks are based on my photography and would not be able to be done from life? I do some multiple exposure works and use that as reference for paintings.
Mm. Yeah, so I mean, it's definitely possible that some pieces are just not going to be possible to be done from direct observation. We have imaginations, we have processes that don't just include looking at something and doing it. So I will say that that is okay to include, but we do also want to see work from direct observation. We just tend to discourage things from two-dimensional references because that can become a habit that you'll have to break when you get to RISD. So we just want to see that you've already sort of thought about different ways that you can, create work. But it sounds interesting what you're doing, like having this photography practice that sort of relates to your drawing practice as well.
Um, what would be considered inappropriate to include in the portfolio?
Yeah, I mean, again, that's a question only you can answer. I will say that we are all artists who review the applications. We have seen just about everything. So it's not really a concern of scaring us away with your work. It's more about how do you want the reviewer to understand you as a person. So use your best judgment about what is or is not inappropriate, knowing that some things can be challenging to a viewer and productive as a piece of artwork. And sometimes things can be gory for the sake of gory, and maybe that's not the right artistic choice. So that's a conversation to have in a portfolio review. But just know there's not a, subject matter that, unless it's like clearly offensive, and offensive to a, identity or a group of people, of course that's not okay. But if it's just sort of like the nude body or more horror gore type work, like that's not going to scare us off.
Yeah. But yeah, maybe choose like a nude body from like a figure drawing class and
Yeah, exactly. That's a good comment, Maren.
um I just want to reiterate what you've said already, what I've said. But just there are a lot of questions in here about like, oh, if I'm interested in furniture design, should I mostly have furniture design in my portfolio? Unless you're applying as a transfer, in which case you are applying to a particular major, then no, your work should, you can have furniture design in your portfolio if you're applying as a first year, but we should not be looking at your portfolio and only see furniture design and not get any indication of your readiness for experimental and foundation studies.
Mm.
Even if you're applying as a transfer and you're applying to furniture, for example, you can still include other disciplines, but it should be very clear that you're wanting to go into furniture. So I just wanted to say that again because to kind of hit a lot of the questions that we're getting, just to clarify. Okay, let's see. Maybe we have time for like one or two more
I
questions.
can try to be more rapid fire.
Oh, okay. Okay. What qualities or themes in a portfolio often reveal that an applicant is a good fit for RISD's culture?
Whoa, there's so many different answers. But the things that come to mind about RISD's culture and community is that there's like a real effort to explore and try new things and learn from one another. We're a very like diverse and multicultural campus. There's so much that you learn just from working alongside your peers. So seeing curiosity, I guess like that's the word that sticks out in my brain. I don't know. What would you say to that, Maren? Like what qualities of a RISD student, do you like to see reflected in the
I mean, I would say just like this willingness to try new things. Like, I definitely don't like you might be really technically skilled also that, but you're not showing us any personality. Like we want to see your personality and point of view. And also like this openness and willingness to try new things. So I like to sometimes give the example that like, let's say we have two portfolios. One is very technically skilled, but there's no, again, point of view or personality. I didn't learn anything about this person aside from that they can draw really well. And this other portfolio isn't quite there technically, but like the ideas are really exciting. They're trying all different sorts of things. They're clearly open and excited to step outside the box. That portfolio to me is a lot stronger and more in line with what our students are doing, what we're trying to teach our
Yeah.
students.
Yep.
So,
Completely agree.
is including cultural drawings, paintings a great way to stand out, or would you suggest that is cliche?
That is a question for portfolio review. I think
These
it
are
could go
such good
both ways.
questions for in-person portfolio
Yeah.
reviews. Choose one.
That it could go either way.
Excellent. Okay. And then let's see. There, I did see a quick, speaking of portfolio reviews, just to quickly go over them. The in-person ones, you bring your work physically, or you can prepare like digital representation, like photographs of it, like on an iPad or something. Make sure the iPad's charged if that's what you're doing. Make sure you're ready to show your work. If it's an online review, you will not be submitting work ahead of time in slide room. You'll just be prepared with like a Google Slides presentation. Make sure it's not restricted, so you don't waste any time granting the reviewer access. You can either share your screen or you'll drop a link to the reviewer in the breakout room. They'll share their screen while looking at your work. So I saw that and I just wanted to point that out. Okay, let's see. Okay, I think okay. If I have one big project with different aspects of it, can I use two slides to showcase the entire project? For example, what if I stem two different mediums from one inspiration? Can I reference another slide in the description, or should I just keep one project to one slide?
No, you can. I would say no more than 2 slides for one project.
Excellent. Okay, wow. Okay.
These are great questions, everyone. It's so good we can't even get to all of them.
I have a social media account documenting my sketches and less serious work. Is that something I should demonstrate? I could demonstrate in my portfolio or more in my application? I guess I'm wondering is if the question is like, am I looking for like less sketches, less serious work? We kind of address that. But as I started reading it at first, I thought they meant like, can I like link my Instagram profile?
I mean, you can, but no guarantee that we'll click on it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, a lot of my ideas are about personal experiences that are best captured using self-portraits. Is it okay to have multiple self-portraits as long as it's not the only subject I include?
Yep.
Okay, cool. Cool, cool, cool. A lot of these are great, and a lot of them the kind of things we've already answered.
Yeah.
Okay, well, you know what? Let's just leave it at this. What's your best advice for somebody who making a portfolio, whatever stage they're in, whatever year they're in?
I would say that my best advice is do not become obsessed with the idea of perfection
Ooh,
because
love it.
you are an ever-changing human being, just like every artist in the world. And your ideas and projects and thoughts and creations are going to evolve. And that's actually the whole point of college is for you to evolve. So don't become so obsessed with the idea of having a perfect portfolio. I would instead encourage you to think about your portfolio as a moment in time of who you are in this moment, how you like to think, the work you've created in the last 2 years, and you're presenting it to a group of artists and saying, here's who I am as an artist. I hope that this, gives you more information about my potential as a RISD student.
Mhm.
Lower the stakes a little bit in your own brain, and I think that can help a lot with your experience of the whole process. And then other piece of advice, make now, curate later. It's August still. You have time. It's gonna be okay. What would you
Absolutely.
say, Maren?
Similar to what you said in that just like don't worry about what is portfolio material because that just tends to stunt the creative process. Like absolutely challenge yourself, push yourself outside your comfort zone. If you're thinking like what is RISD looking for, we're looking for you to challenge yourself, push yourself outside of your comfort zone, have fun, experiment, just
Mhm.
try new things.
Yeah.
And that means so many different things. But basically collect this information from RISD, from other schools, see where they're similar, where they're different, put them aside somewhere so they're not in the forefront of your mind, just kind of clogging your creative process. And then just make work, have fun with it. You know, like Emily said, make now, curate later. As it gets closer to the deadline, look at everything you've done the last couple of years and just pick pieces that pop and best represent you. No theme required. Give yourself deadline ahead of the deadline so you have time to actually do this. But for
Yeah.
now, just have fun making work and just go hog wild and make mistakes, see where they lead you. Some of the best
Yeah.
stuff are unexpected.
100%. Deadlines, details are available in our application prep webinar series. More of those webinars are coming up. Thank
Mhm.
you all so much for being here today. I hope this has been helpful. Thank you for your excellent, thoughtful questions. We really appreciate it. If you have questions along the way, you can always reach out to us via email. Maren dropped the admissions@ris.edu email address in the chat. We are here to help. I hope you guys have a great fall semester, and we hope to see you soon. Bye bye, everyone.
Everyone.